Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. We have something to celebrate here. This is episode 200, and I kind of can't believe it. I started this venture this is season 5, as you know, so years ago, and I'm not sure I ever knew that I would be here. So I'm super excited, and I'm mostly just grateful. Thank you for listening. Thank you for telling your friends. Thank you for subscribing and leaving reviews and all that stuff. It helps so much. And you all don't really understand how much you motivate me. I love getting your texts, your stories. So many people have told me how this podcast has really helped them. I mean, that makes me tear up. If you knew me at all, you knew I go straight to verklempt, like very easily. So it's just super motivating. You're the reason I do it. I appreciate you. I thank you, and keep it up. Keep telling your friends. One of my goals is to reach twice as many people this year. I hope I can do that. And just thank you. Thank you for being here for episode 200. All right. So with all that said, let's talk about burnout. What a great segue. But yeah, it's really easy to get burned out in a sport where you are constantly working toward the next step, and never really reaching it. Like, there's not like a finale. There's not like, once I get this title, I'm done. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And I also think it's interesting that one of the things I've heard some people experience, but they don't quite say it this way, I think a little bit because they don't want to talk about it this way, is boredom. Because there is some level of monotony that goes into training dogs and training again and conditioning again and trial and train, trial, repeat kind of a thing. And without clear goals, or without at least goals that like really make you want to like jump out of bed in the morning and grab that proverbial cheese stick and head out into the yard, it can start to look a little bit like work, or look just like it's lost its luster. It's not that bright, shiny, fun thing anymore. And I think all of us go through all of these cycles, right? I've felt burnout. I have felt boredom. Boredom, maybe you call it lack of motivation, call it whatever. But there's that moment where you're just questioning, like, why am I doing this? Like, I should be motivated, but I'm not. Or, I have this trial coming up and I don't feel prepared, but I also cannot find the will to get off this couch. Okay. And one thing before we get into the burnout versus boredom and like kind of what the difference is, I want to say, of course, sitting here at the end of January, this is important. The seasonal effectiveness, right? I don't want to go so far as to say the affective disorder, though that is a real thing, but the seasonal changes that we feel, especially those of you listening in the Northern Hemisphere where it's winter and many of us have just experienced a really cold month, that really affects us. Like, I know personally, I'm very light driven. I open my eyes when the sun goes up, and I really prefer to close them when it goes down, which of course in the winter could mean 7:30, right? So it's a struggle. And so the cold, the daylight, if you live in a place where that it's really cloudy, it really can impact us. So think about whether or not the weather or the change of seasons or just kind of where you live is impacting you, because that could be a factor. All right. It could be a factor of how you're feeling. Okay. Let's jump in. Is it burnout? Is it boredom? Like, how do we tell the difference? Okay. Burnout. Here's some things. You can feel exhausted. maybe exhausted physically, but maybe it's just mentally or emotionally exhausted. And the thing about feeling exhausted, like mentally or emotionally, is that a lot of times it's cumulative. So there might be things going on in the rest of your life, and plus your dog stuff, maybe plus work, plus family, whatever, plus home, whatever's going on. And you just get to that point where you're done. You're just done. The meter is reading in the red. You are just done. And so when all of that factors in, a lot of times you just might feel burned out. Could be about dogs, but it also could be about life in general. So again, if you can parse that and see where that's coming from, that's going to be really helpful later when we talk about addressing it. All right. Another burnout sign. Everything feels like, training specifically, but everything dog related feels like a chore. It feels like work. Even the parts that you used to love doing, right? Maybe you used to love going to that Tuesday night class, and now you're like, I can't. I'm just going to Netflix, and Ben and Jerry's and I are just going to have a moment, and that's going to be my night. So even things you used to love, you just really can't find the love right now. Okay. Another one, you're dreading trials, or you're feeling anxious just thinking about them. And this is different than feeling, normal nervous energy, or whatever normal is for you, but it's different than feeling normal nervous energy, because you're actually like dreading going. Like you actually just like, you don't even want to go. You don't even maybe want to see those people or deal with that parking lot or whatever it is. You just can't, right? It's that overwhelming feeling. I mean, that in my mind, it's like, I just can't. That's kind of how I summarize when I'm feeling like burnt out. All right. And the final one is, it could be affecting other parts of your life. Just like other parts of your life could be affecting your dog life could be affecting, or how you're feeling about your dog life could be affecting other parts of your life. We cannot get away from the fact that our dog lives are interconnected or spill over, and vice versa, into our, I call it life, right? Like our regular life, our day-to-day life. It all is related, even though we think we're really awesome at compartmentalizing, okay? It does bleed over, especially when we are mentally and emotionally drained, okay? Now, boredom signs. And I think boredom is important because no one wants to admit to being bored. But I think some of these signs might tell you could have a little tinge of boredom going on. First is you're unmotivated, but you're not necessarily tired. You're just uninspired. Okay. You know what you have to do. You've got work out there to do. You know what it takes. You're not tired. You feel fine, or you feel emotionally fine, but you just don't wanna, right? You just are unmotivated. Another sign is training feels repetitive, feels like you're doing the same things over and over again. Maybe even trials feel like you're just doing the same things over and over again. It's just, like train, trial, repeat, right? Train, trial, repeat. And you don't even really know what you're working on, or maybe you do, but it's not hitting. Okay. The third idea is maybe you're hitting your goals, but you still feel unfulfilled. So maybe your goals aren't exciting enough for you, or they don't make you want to change anything or do anything differently or step into your growth zone or anything. You're hitting your goals, but it's kind of unfulfilling. It's not giving you that same hit again, or even like the same dopamine again. You're just not getting the same feedback out of it. And then finally, you're craving something different, but you have no idea what it is, right? You just know that something's got to change, something's got to be different, but not sure what. Okay. So I think it's interesting because no one ever says that they're bored, but yet, like, I would have never said I was bored. But if I read some of these signs, which, yes, I researched some of this, right? I always want to have good research for you guys, but like, I felt unmotivated, but not tired. I felt like training kind of feels repetitive, or like I'm not really getting anywhere. And I've definitely hit some goals and been like, yeah, okay, whatever. Right? So I think boredom maybe is sneakier, and I think we don't really want to admit it because we would never say, oh, I'm so bored with my dogs. I would never say that. But yet I can understand how if I'm not like engaged with what I'm working on, the opposite of engagement could be boredom. Okay. And maybe you find your own vocabulary word for this, maybe suggest one, send it to me. but I think it's interesting to think about. So, speaking of boredom, how do we get out of being bored then? Or at least, if not being bored, or one of your replacement vocabulary words for this, how do we find our inspiration again, right? How do we find that the joy or the motivation or whatever the antidote to boredom is, okay? First, I would say, try a new challenge. This is such the time of year where I'm talking to a lot of my coaching clients about their goals. And some of them are like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do this year. And some of them are like, none of my goals turn me on. And that, I think, is a little bit of boredom, right? So I think when we put ourselves out there and try a new challenge, maybe you try something that will stretch your limits as your skills. Maybe it'll stretch your ability as a trainer, as your own personal dog trainer. Maybe you want to try new venues, new things. We've been talking about that over the last month. Maybe you just need a push and stretch yourself, or find a new version or a new endeavor or new flavor, new angle that actually makes you excited again. Okay. Set a challenge for yourself, right? So that you want to work toward it. The second, of course, broken record here, but set those process-based goals. Sometimes those outcome goals aren't the end all be all. Maybe instead you want to focus on mastering something, right? Getting really good at, mastering, becoming better under pressure, or mastering certain skills, or mastering your rituals this year. Like, this is the year you button up those rituals and they are like ironclad and they work every time, or maybe this is the year that you are like, I'm investing in my mindset, in these skills, in whatever, right? I've been investing, for instance, in my obedience skills, right? In addition to my agility and things like that, right? So when we focus on process, we can focus on mastery in a different way than outcome, right? Because I can get the titles without being a master of certain things, right? You can skate by, you can, just barely make it, right? You can, obedience people will understand, you just get a 171 the whole way. Like, you can do that. It doesn't become a master. It doesn't challenge you. Maybe it doesn't excite you. So think about that through a different lens, process goals and mastering them. Okay. The next one, very much related, is work on yourself as a handler. I talked about this in a different podcast, certainly in my newsletter /blog, about, what are you going to do for yourself, for your personal goals this year? Not just your dog goals, not just the titles, not just all of the stuff you want to do, but personally. How do you want to stretch? How do you want to grow? Is that your handling skills? Is that your fitness? Do you want to become a more fit handler so that you can, have more stamina throughout the day? It doesn't matter your sport. Those are long days, and we need to be able to hold ourselves up throughout. Is it your mindset? So I think we can turn the focus on ourselves as well, and not just always have to be about our dogs. And that then will force us to measure our success in a little bit different way. Because if you're going to go after your mindset this year, or you're going to go after your fitness this year, how are you going to measure those things? And they require a more creative version of measurement to be able to see that progress. And then the fourth thing is, and we're still talking about breaking out of your boredom, is, God forbid, train for fun. Go play with your dog without a structure. Go teach your dog some tricks. Just go do something nonsensical or fun, or, just go drive somewhere and go for a hike that you haven't been in a long time. Or maybe go for a hike in the snow, which you've never been in the snow. You've only been in the summer or something like that. Just switch it up. It doesn't have to be the same schedule, the same monotony all the time. Your dogs will be excited by the difference. You'll be more excited about the difference. Just do something different. Even if it's a different training approach, or maybe once a week you try something you heard on the internet, right? And just for fun, just to like try it out. Or share that, or start, having an accountability, like a friend to go do fun things with. In my planner system, I begin every month with asking, like, what are you going to do this month for joy? just for pure fun. And that's in there. Like I dedicate, 12 pages, right? One every month. And plus joy goals. So there's 13 pages in that planner dedicated to asking you, like, what are you going to do for joy, for you, for your dogs? Like, have some fun. Like, it's okay to make time for lightheartedness, for just enjoying your dogs, getting to know them again as dogs, not just these performing robots we want them to be. Okay? All right. So when we come back, we're going to tackle what we do when we're feeling burned out. Quick question. Do you ever wish you had more mindset help? Well, the Q membership was created just for that reason. Every month we pick a topic and then we have 4 lessons, which are kind of like these podcasts that we dive deeper into. And so if you are ready for more, you're ready for more mindset work, think about joining the Q membership. Annual members get a free coaching session, but you can also choose the monthly option as well. Go to theqcoach.com to learn more. Let's get back to the episode. All right, so burnout can be a little bit tougher. I feel like it's got a little more of an edge to it because a lot of times I feel like burnout is almost like kick-started by an event that happens, or like it's like the last straw kind of a thing. Like I was doing fine until this happened and then I was fried, or I just, like my phrase, I just can't anymore, right? So if you're actually feeling burned out, one of the very first and smartest things to do is just give yourself permission to take a break. And I'm emphasizing permission there because I think that we just don't take a break enough. We don't give ourselves permission. We think we have to, keep pushing through and be tough. And we, I've said this phrase before, we should ourselves to death, meaning, I should be working. I should be doing conditioning with my dog. I should be working my dog every day. I should be should. And before you know it, we don't want to do anything, right? Because somehow we've put all this pressure onto ourselves, either from ourselves, from external sources, from what we think others expect of us. And it's better to take a break than to give up. So you need to take care of yourself and your boundaries and figure out what it is that you need. And sometimes a break is exactly the answer. Okay. The next thing is adjusting your expectations, because sometimes burnout comes from feeling like we have to do something, right? Like I was just talking about the shoulding, not really a word, but like all the shoulds, rather than really wanting to. And so I want you to ask yourself if there's just something that you're kind of making yourself do. Like, do you want to do it? Is this something that you want to do, your dog wants to do? Are you two just in a fight and you're just like totally over it? Or, you're pushing toward, some title or qualifying period or something. And, but maybe you've lost your joy for it. So think about that, ask yourself that question, but then figure out like what your expectations are then if you are going to try to perform from this kind of burned out mindset, right? Like how well do you think that goes? And if you need to, right, maybe you've got 2 more weeks left in a qualifying period or something like that. If you need to keep pushing, then you need to think about like, well, how am I going to do this without running myself into the ground? What can I do to make this more enjoyable? How can I maybe shift my expectations, prepare differently, take a little extra time off afterwards, make sure I go listen to music in the car or something restorative. How am I going to deal with this, right? Because we don't want, our sport, our love, our passion to just become another thing we have to do. Okay. All right. The third thing is find support, whether it's a coach like yours truly, a friend, your favorite instructor, maybe someone who has nothing to do with dogs so that it's a really great person to vent to, because you're going to say like, look, you're going to understand nothing I'm about to tell you. And that's great. That actually makes it even better. Like I'm going to tell you about all this drama and all this stuff and just get it out and vent. And thank you in advance for your support, right? So just find someone who gets it, who will be a good soundboard for you, and just sounding board, I suppose, and just like talk it out, just kind of figure it out and let it go. I feel like this goes really well with the angry journaling approach, which I have talked about sometimes. It's not my approach, but I love it. And that is journaling where we say all the things we would never say out loud, right? The example that was used, one of the examples that was used in when I learned this method was the woman who has a couple kids, and she said, I started my journal that day with, I hate my kids. And she's like, of course I don't hate my kids. I love my kids. But that day I wanted to say, you say all the ugly things, all the angry, that's why it's angry journaling, and she's like, and I went on and I just journaled and I just like got all the things out that I was angry about and I was mad about. And she's like, I hate my kids because, I don't have any freedom anymore. Everything I have to do is for them. And I resent that. And I don't want to do that anymore. And I want time for myself and da-da-da-da. And so she went on. And of course, as she went on, she worked through it, got to the root of the cause of what was going on in her life and was able then to let it go. But also then got some insights out of it. But I think sometimes if we don't have someone else to talk to, if we don't have someone else to vent to, angry journaling, I think is really overlooked because you can get out a lot of angst and say all the terrible things you would never say out loud, or you would never want anyone to read your paper. And at the end of it, you take that piece of paper, set it on fire, throw it in the trash, flush it down the toilet, whatever you want to do with it, but you get it out. Because carrying around that angst, that whatever your reasons for burnout are, all of that can get really, really heavy. Okay. You got to process it in some way. All right. And lastly, focus on some non-competitive activities or some sports that aren't your main sports, right? Like I have a client who will tell me that she does barn hunt because it's just for fun. It's just totally for fun. Agility is serious. It is her sport. It is her passion. It is her love. But then the dogs get just to go do barn hunt. She's never nervous. It's always relaxed. It's just for fun because she cares, but she doesn't care, and it's almost like a non-competitive thing for her, even though obviously there are scores and ribbons and so forth. But she approaches it as though it's literally just a fun thing. Like, for instance, as I'm recording this podcast, in a few days, I'm going to be doing a fetch trial, right? Do I care about fetch? No, it's not a primary thing for my dogs, for me. But it's like a fun thing to do. I've got a young dog and an older dog, and they know how to fetch, so we'll go play fetch for a day. So it's something different. When I walk to the line, when they call me and I walk in the ring, I'm not going to be nervous. I'm going to be like, okay, this is just a fun thing. And my dogs are like, great, go get a bumper? Yeah, sure. What direction, So that's another example. And, a lot of venues now are starting to come up with these different things that we can do with our dogs, which, whether it's a fit dog thing or a fetch thing or barn hunt or, something else, they are serious sports, but they don't have to be your serious sport, right? I envy the people who have barn hunt championship, 20 or whatever on their dogs. I love watching those dogs hunt. But for me, that's not my main sport. So I get to have fun in that ring. Okay. So think about that. But it also could be hiking, casual training, doing tricks, teach your dog tricks. I'm taking a trick class with my puppy. I'm having a riot because he needs to learn how to learn. I need to learn how to teach him. And we're doing something that kind of doesn't matter. Is a play bow that important in his lifelong journey? No. But are we having fun? Yes. Yes, we are. Okay. All right. So you can probably think of a lot of other things to do. I am hoping that the lists I gave you are just starting points, right? Brainstorm it, journal it out, brainstorm it with a friend. Figure out how you can get yourself out of this funk. In my newsletter this week, I talked a lot about, first about getting out of this funk, about knowing your why. And I do think that is always going to be the most important thing. Knowing why it is you got into dog sports to begin with. Why do you compete? Why do you even want to do this? What was it? And I think going back to your original answer to that question, meaning if you're in a terrible mood or you're in a funk and you're like, I don't know why I do this anymore at all, maybe that's not the time to come up with a new why. Okay. But if I go back in my original why, or I ask myself through the lens of, no, why did I get started with to begin with? Why did I first want this breed of dog or the first time I walked in and tried to take on this sport or whatever, like why? What was it I loved about it? A lot of times we can find in those original answers, there are those little sparks of joy, those little sparks of passion that we used to have. And if we go back to those like kernels of a beginning, we can rekindle, reignite that, the spark, the fun, the passion, whatever that was for you that gets you started. So don't forget your why. And yes, there's also a place in the journal to write that down, because I'm really passionate about knowing your why, because times they're not always like sunshine and rainbows, right? And so we have to make sure that for the times where we're in a funk, or we're bored, or we're burned out, or we're just tired of beating our heads against the wall, because that's what it feels like. We need to know our why we got into it to begin with. And then hopefully these ideas that I've given you today will help you recalibrate and like kind of get you back on your feet, get you going again, and get you to remember. All right. Don't discount the seasonality of things. And I just encourage you to keep checking in on yourselves and know that you're not alone in this. And, you just might need just a little zhuzh, a little refresh, a little, shift in perspective. Okay. So this week, your homework is to really sit with these thoughts. Now, if you're in a rosy, sunny, like rose-colored glasses kind of life is good kind of place, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Don't try to make yourself burned out through some journaling exercise or by going down this rabbit hole, but put these in your pocket because when you're in a good place, that's the best time to assess what tools keep you in a good place. Okay. Because when you're in a funk, everything's terrible, right? If you're in a funk and I ask you, what do you want to eat? You're like, nothing. Everything sounds terrible. Never mind. Right. But if you're in a good mood and I ask you what your favorite food is, you're going to brightly tell me. Well, if you're in a funk, probably a good time to eat your favorite food. Right. But you only know your favorite food when you do it when you're in a good place. Okay. So sometimes in these mindset journeys that we're on, we create the tools for the tough times when we're in the good times, because it's easier to see. We're thinking more clearly. We're much more positive for sure. So even though you might not personally be experiencing boredom or burnout in this exact day and time, it is a great time to think about, well, what would get me out of that situation? What is my why? How would I reset? Have I ever felt that way? What did I do? So it's great times to do that assessment. And of course, if you're in it, if you're in a rut, if you're grinding it out, if you're having trouble, maybe even your goals, you're having trouble setting goals for the year, take a look at some of these things and see if you can't get yourself, out of the rut that you feel like you're in and back into the sunshine, or at least understanding what your why is and what draws you forward. Okay. That was a very long piece of homework, but I think you get the point. All right. So no matter what you're doing this week, I hope you have a fantastic time with your dogs. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner, workbook, and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details, or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks, and have a great week with your dogs.